Good evening from Singapore. Good morning from Wernersville, Pennsylvania, USA. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Educate, enlighten, and entertain. And on this 5th episode of State of Current Affairs with your hosts Lillian Cauldwell and Viki Esther Chang from Singapore, we are going to discuss Singapore again, because that's near and dear to Viki's heart, and also wind up the program on a segment on the power of words and how they're used, manipulated, or express someone's ideas, beliefs, or control. So good morning, Viki. Please start.
Hello, Lillian, thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Either in the platform of Passionate World Talk Radio, or on YouTube, or on Tumblr, wherever you are present virtually. And I am right here in Singapore, and we are on State of Current Affairs, and it is 9:42 Singapore time here. It is on a Tuesday evening. I am so honored to be here to present the Cauldwell over there in the United States, and why it is so important to the rest of the world. Lillian, I'm sharing stories of support for a start, really as a case study for everyone all over. And I think it's important that we get a perspective outside your community. And that's why I think it's for the world, for you and your audience and the listeners, so that you can think about some of the issues I'm bringing up as I talk about some of the things that I read or watch around me. And of course, I like to talk about some things that I read in the world from the media. So today I'd like to share with Lillian and everyone restaurant villain period. Again, we need you. The restaurant reaches out online for support amid turbulent period. Now, this article says, it may not be the most joyful occasion based on the latest social media post by its owner, Mr. Tan Kian Loon. Located in Gilman Barracks, the restaurant these difficulties of the restaurants. The post began with the owner's plea to potential customers. We need you, it read, before mentioning how it has been a turbulent period for the restaurant, specifically since 2023. And it goes on to show about the post on Instagram, a long post by the owner of the restaurant, pleading to customers, past customers and potential customers, that they are really struggling with a restaurant that has been around for 12 years. And I would like to bring this up, not only this restaurant, Lillian, but about in general. And in this year, restaurants closing down, not only in Singapore, I think many parts of the world. And I saw in YouTube, people were saying retail has shut, about 30% of retail shut down in certain streets in the US, in Europe, and other parts of the US and other parts of the world. And where I lived for a long time in Europe, about Europe, that is, it's almost like the sick man of the world because, economy never picks up in Europe. Jobs are low, growth are low, and a lot of people and what brings to me about the hardship. In many parts of the world, in many economies, they actually employ, statistics have shown, between 70 to 90% of the workforce, of the labor force in the whole economy, wherever you are, particularly if you are in underdeveloped country or in developing countries. The role of SMEs, or small, medium-sized mom and pop shops, the roles that they play in employment is 90% of employment. If you're talking about developed countries like in US or in certain parts of Europe, you've got big, huge multinational corporations, MNCs, that employ hundreds and thousands of employees. And I will dovetail to the next article I'll talk about by CNN a little bit later on. But I'm just going to say that this article brings to mind, it pains me to read another article in a week that is going to announce that they're struggling and they may be facing bankruptcy, or they may be closed down. And this is not the first restaurant. This is the first shop. And we're talking about a huge range of restaurants, a huge range. We're talking about 5-star restaurants, Michelin star restaurants, shops closing down, struggling and closing down. In between, you can think of the many struggles and many unannounced business that are closing down or pending closing down, of the imminence of needing to close down because of various economic forces. So pandemic era we look at, it's a struggle for everyone, because think about the SMEs. You can help them once, you can help them twice or even 3 times. But if the larger macroeconomic forces aren't doing well, the forces aren't in your favor, we can help you forever. And look at what the SMEs and people who are living quiet quitting. And we're talking rentals rising, and we're talking about people really moving away from the communities. We're talking about, for example, in New Zealand, there aren't many jobs for young people. They're all migrating to Australia. So this is emblematic of the economic situation, not only in Singapore, in many parts of the world. The stories that I hear again and again, even over in Bloomberg Business News. So over to you, Lillian. And the news that I'm reporting or that I'm commenting on is about yet another restaurant that has been around for 12 years. It's facing very difficult times because people are not spending, people aren't coming, people are actually say that this is a symptom of the economies not doing well. If you look at Bloomberg right now, they are discussing and debating, is the economy going into recession or not? And of course, some people say, oh, saying America is a strong economy. We're not going into recession. It's going up. It's going down, 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 but it goes up. Whenever it goes down, despite what data shows, I think we can't run away from real life. If the news, Louis Vuitton, the richest man on earth, together with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, their share price has actually plunged a couple of days ago, and they lost and wiped out billions and billions of dollars from their share price. And I'm just going to say that people are pulling from purchasing luxury goods, and they're not visiting expensive restaurants. Then they will start filtering down to the mid-range restaurants, and then the mom and pop restaurants, and of course your S&Ps, and your auto not only info. I think this is a phenomenon in many parts of the world, definitely, and also I think that I read and watch the news in Bloom, it's happening already in America. Whether the economy is going to go up, I don't know, but it seems that the signs around really does show that it is going down. People are not spending anymore. And to study economics, there is something called the multiplier effect. And the multiplier effect, if you study it, if you spend $1, it will have a geometric progression effect that you will gain momentum and expand the economy if you spend $1. But if you withdraw $1, it has a contractionary effect even faster. So therefore, it doesn't stop spending $1. And if everyone stops spending that dollar, multiplier effect that shrinks the economy, and that makes jobs creation much more difficult. So over to you, Lillian. That's my first article for you and your audience.
I think people fail to recognize what restaurants really are. And in my mind, restaurants are the equivalent to fast food because you're not staying at home and making it for yourself. You're going out, sitting at a table or a booth or on the floor, depending on what culture you're eating that night, and somebody else is preparing the food for you. And yes, restaurants depend on the economy because their prices reflect how much money they need to spend in order for them to buy the necessary ingredients for the various dishes that appear on their menu. There's a favorite Chinese/Japanese restaurant that my grandson dies to go to every time I ask him, can I take you out? And he always names the same place. We've been going there now for a long time, and he's only 11, so you can imagine when he started going there with mommy and daddy. But the point is, we have seen the prices raise on the sushi and the sashimi over the years. And as supply and demand grows for certain fish, and as it gets more difficult to buy these fish, especially them that are not affected by mercury or dumped cocaine into the ocean, or some of the other illicit drugs that are just dumped in the ocean, their prices started out very low. And now when you want to get an order of 4, for example, of salmon, which is a very pricey fish. I think one really good sized one sells for over $40,000. Yes. And when we first started to go, it was like $1, $2 for the whole shebang. And now it's up to $22, $25. That's a lot of money to spend for going out. In fact, for most American families, $25 used to feed a family of 4. And then you have the fast food chains like McDonald's, for example, in California, who now pay their entry positions $25 an hour. Now, I understand why they need to pay that much money, because as I and another host pointed out 15 years ago, no one in Congress or the Senate could survive off the minimum wage of $6 an hour and feed a family of 4 and still be above the nutrition level in this country. So these people need to be paid and have that type of insurance. But folks, that is reflected through the how much you're going to pay for your Happy Meal that's no longer happy. But you have to understand, it's the economy, stupid, as Clinton once pointed out. And if your economy is full of holes and you're not having enough people working to bring money into the economy, we're not just talking about the corporation in which they work for, but also for the general economy of that neighborhood, that city, that state, that country, then you don't have enough money for the government to spend on trying to improve your infrastructure. For example, the economy is your stomach, folks. And when your stomach gets upset, we all know what happens. You have to take immediate action.
Yeah. And Lillian, I totally echo you regarding the economy. And just to add on and to agree with what you're saying, you know, these restaurants are facing supply chain issues because it gets so much more expensive to bring the fish that has been shipping that boat has become so expensive. So every cost is pushed to the final consumers like you and I, and we are the one biting the bullet. So how much can you buy? I mean, if you look at economics, right? We're talking
Right.
about the filtering effect of the economy. Rises and it's negative. It's always pushed to the final consumer. That's you and I. And very rarely do we speak up as consumers to policymakers to fix the origin of the problem. It could be supply chain, it could be fuel, it could be supply, it could be agreement, it could be free trade agreement, etc. It could be training, it could be greater massive sources of supply and helping farmers, etc., etc. So we're talking about unseen forces behind this, but we are the ones feeling the effect of inflation. We're feeling the effects, the final effects, individuals and the family. And before I go to the article that is so close to my heart. 5 waiters, full-time waiters, and another 5 part-time waiting providers, right? 10. And think about that 10 families. If one restaurant closes down, it affects actually not only the owners, the bottom line of the owners, maybe
It's a ripple effect.
and employees that can stop. It is a ripple effect, and that's that we aren't talking enough. Not in the news, mass media or the mainstream media, and I don't hear that in Bloomberg, CNBC, MSNBC. I don't hear my news. The reporters, journalists never stick their mic into the mouth of waiters and waitresses and ask them, how are you feeling? Therefore, those again like this another a promotion for our show. Lillian, hands down, this is going to be an award-winning show. But hence,
I hope
we
so.
have to talk about. We have to talk about the struggle of the people, because no one is coming to the main streets to interview their pays.
Well, let
So
me
I'm
tell
looking
you,
at an article like, yeah, tell me.
in the States, it used to be until very recently that these waiters were paid minimum wage with the understanding that any tips that they got would make up the rest of their paycheck. Well, that's
Yes,
nice.
it is.
But then they
No, they're
started getting
tipping.
taxed on their tips. So they were paying
Yeah.
out more money in taxes, state, city, local, federal,
Yeah.
than they were bringing in. And then somebody came up with the idea that all the waiters and waitresses should share their tips, so everybody got a piece of the pie. And by the time they divvied it up, they were right back, or as they say in poker, they lost more than they earned. And yet these people had families to take care of, and children, or older parents, or maybe somebody had a chronic illness. It's ununderstandable, not understandable to me, how government leaders who pull in vast amounts of money, who are given free insurance because they work for the government. I'm not sure how it works overseas, but in the US, if you're a senator or a congressman, you get free insurance until the day you die. So does your family and your children and relatives. So they're getting a free lunch. And then they have these astronomical salaries that enable them to be among the world's wealthiest people with mansions and castles. And then they can't understand why the regular people are so infuriated with their conduct.
No, yeah, and I totally agree with that. And the thing is, you brought up an issue that I think it kind of piques my interest and my mind. I mean, America, everything. You've got your technology, and yet you've got to pay like 70% of your income on your global income wherever you live.
I got news for you. They even tax our Social Security. My Social Security monthly payments, I have to file a tax return on them, folks, because it's money.
That's shocking. That's shocking. I mean,
so you're getting taxed twice.
I'm just going to ask you to ask your government and your elected officials, where does all this go to if you have got all these oil and gas underneath and all these natural resources that belong to the land, that belong to the people? Where are they? I mean, contrast that. I just want to make a quick contrast. You and your listeners and your viewers, because it's so important why I'm here for this show, State of Our World, because we are so different. In Singapore, we've got no land because I told you we're a little island. We're all overpopulated. We're building this way upwards. Every inch of the land is concrete. We've got no agriculture. We've got no fish to be imported here. We're buying it from Indonesia and Malaysia that ship into into the big tunnels, the pipes that go underneath the sea into the island. We've got no fuel of our own. We've got no cement. We buy sand and soil from our neighbor countries. That's why it's expensive. We've got no water. We are purchasing water, but of course, thanks to technology, we're producing water from the air and other kinds of technology, water desalination plants that desalinate and cleans water with using reverse osmosis from the oceans. We've got no fish farming here because all our ocean around is occupied by the ship that uses Singapore airport. We are one of the biggest ports in the world. We've got little bit of fish farming here. But what I'm going to tell you is that we, as a little country, as compared with what you are the largest country in the world, America, right now, after the dissolution of USSR. America is the largest country. We've got no resources, right?
Right.
And anyone can cut off a net with that.
But you're not in
And
debt.
compare it.
United States is
and
in debt
compare
for
it
over $1 trillion.
America, yeah. Oh, compare that with America that has all these natural resources, and yet it is in such big debt. Someone has mismanaged it somehow, and you are paying 70% of your global income wherever anyone resides.
Our
non-domiciled income.
grandchildren
Yeah.
and great-grandchildren are going to be paying the
So,
price.
and you are pushing that, yes, to the next generation. So,
Yes.
so I am going to ask, it kind of piques my interest, like, what aren't you guys out there like asking and demanding things to be done? Maybe through the election vote, but I don't think that's enough. People are not thinking deep enough. If you compare that country to country, we are the smallest country in the world besides the Vatican. And then America is the largest country in the world. We're talking about heaven and earth. We're talking about heaven and hell. So I'm just thinking that we can sink any moment here as a little island, but that's why we're working.
A lot of it is because our financials are unbalanced, and the rich and the really wealthy corporations, they don't keep their money in the United States, folks. They send it overseas.
Find a way to
They don't keep it in the United States at all. It's only the poor people who are paying. They are exempted
tax, yes,
from paying high taxes by their rich pals. It's a real game. So the rich remain rich. And you know where all these rich people came from? From the old world. They moved over to the States, when it wasn't the States, of course, to keep their money because they weren't happy in Eurasia, and they just continue their dynasties over here. And now they're putting all their money back out to where they came from originally because it's cheaper than keeping it at home. And that's why I think shows like this are important, because we kind of juxtapose, right, the differences. And then because you talk about your country, and I think listeners will kind of juxtapose it and kind of have this light ups that light up a little bit, you know, when we make a contrast in our cases. But I want to talk about back to the article for State of Our Union, State of Our Current Affairs, and the people that part-time, full-time, contract workers, whatever, supply people, we're going to supply people like deliverers. You're affecting the whole ripple effect. If one business gets affected, one business closed down, it doesn't just affect the owners. It's too simplified, or it's too simplistic to explain it away, to say that this restaurant is closing down, bye. But think about that economic impact on families and on indirect employment that depend on that small business. But I want to talk about, Lillian, very quickly before we talk about your part about the power of words, is the next article that I read today reports that union and works massive port strike begins and I think I heard a little bit over the worker that
just said, we are just paid too little. We can't survive on that little bit of money. So I just want to let you know and contrast, because we're talking about the state of affairs right now. And Lillian, you can have your take on it, and the listeners can have a take on it. But because our show is really just describing about the state of affairs, we can ask people their opinion about the news. They can write to you, Lillian Cauldwell and National World Talk Radio. A couple of things very quickly. In Singapore, the word union it sounds evil. Coming together for collective bargaining sounds evil. And when and that thought wasn't subliminal thought. If you go and have this collective bargaining and this union, you must be a bad person because you kind of the industry. Think about pilots that stop the flight. Think about so when you think about people actually stops and demonstrate and stop work, we think that they are union is evil. And I always have this thought that unions and evil, and contrast that when I am brought up. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen, the listeners and the viewers, and Lillian, you can form your opinion. When I went to France, it is almost like a social welfare state. There is an unemployment handout, which of course shocks me because I come from a highly capitalistic country. We never ask for help because of pride. You die a poor man, you never ask for $1 from someone in the street, for example. When you have got your bills sky high, when you got medical bills sky high, you actually sell your houses, right? Or you just die, right?
Well,
you just die. So let me just continue. So when I went once, I mentioned this in the State of the World Ave. There were taxi driver strikes. There are truck driver strikes when the fuel prices went up because the government says they're not going to subsidize an X percentage anymore. The fuel is going to go up, by which date, and it kind of paralyzed the whole country because all the truck drivers who are transporting important infrastructural equipment kind of stopped along the highway, and the highways were all on lockdown. Think about that. So no one could travel across the country when I was in France. They call it the yellow vest protest because they were all wearing yellow vests. If you are a truck driver, you got to wear kind of a vest to show that you're in the streets. And then you've got teachers unions on strike. And for like a whole week after summer, you will always hear teachers on strike. And we always can predict, oh, okay, after the summer, teachers are going to go on strike. They don't want to work. So the first thought that came to my capitalistic mind, Lillian, is that unions are really bad. They don't want to work. They just want to be lazy. They just want to stay at home. They want to protest about work. Now for a long time, I just want to say that I'm just going to juxtapose what I am, what I was, and what I am right now, and what I'm going to be. Just a little moment. Ding, 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 ding. Now, come back to 2023 and 2024. Do I think that teachers' unions that stop work in schools and paralyze the whole educational system for 1 week is bad? I thought they were lazy and I thought they were evil. Did I think that the taxi drivers were bad? Did I think the truck drivers were bad because they paralyzed the whole country and all the highways were actually kind of barricaded, right? Did I think they were bad because I couldn't travel? And I can tell you I did. I did. But come 2023 and 2024, when all the technology companies start retrenching workers, and you're talking about intelligent people, they start putting people off their jobs just with an email or with a Zoom call and say that, hey, sorry, thank you, goodbye. We don't need your help anymore. And think about the people who were needing that dollar and that kind of money because they needed their plans for their children, etc. Now, it gave me a big awakening. Tell me that I am actually wavering in my ideology. Yes, I am. Because you need workers to be protected and you need to listen to both sides of the story. Because when I was a teacher, I worked so hard and I couldn't have pee time. I didn't have pee time means I couldn't even run to the toilet. My work was piled up. So, and we thought that was the way of life. So I'm just going to tell you that my thoughts have wavered right now. When I think about the Jeff Bezos of the world who actually buy their yacht for $500,000 off the hard work and the sweat of the workers and off my commission. Now I get a big question mark right now. So to tell you this news, not about yes or no, I'm just going to describe the news right now that when I read this and someone says, we can't live on such little pay anymore because everything is rising. Yes, and I'm telling you the prices of real estate have risen 3 times or 4 times in Singapore already within the year. And now we're talking about food prices rising and rental rising and people losing their jobs. Should we protect workers? Should we listen to the voice of the workers? And then should we listen to both sides of the story and not only the mainstream media was only the voice and the message of the super rich. So this is my conclusion for myself. It's my personal opinion. It just represents myself and not your station, Passionate World Talk Radio. But if you ask me, should I listen to both sides of the story? I say yes. Are unions evil? No. We have to find out. And the reason why intelligent people like us, we should go down to the ground and investigate. Are there any truths if they paralyze the whole economy or that industry? So over to you, Lillian. I mean, I'm so passionate about this because
Well,
my
strap
ideology has kind of
yourself
like shifted
in.
and changed.
Strap
Tell
yourself
me.
in, ladies and gentlemen. The port workers in the United States, from Maine all the way down and across Texas practically, are on strike. So what does that mean? That means nothing can go in, export, or import into our country, which means that it ties up the world's economics in their country, making it just as difficult for them because millions of workers will be affected by not getting paid for the goods that they're sending to the United States, which means it's going to rot on the ships, immobile, on the harbors while they get it resolved. And you're going to say, well, damn them. Well, I don't know what a ship docks worker's workload is like, but I do know that our economy is based on man's greed for money and jewels and gold and precious gems and, let's say it, illegal drugs and slave trade, stealing women and girls and little boys to sell abroad in the brothels overseas. You can close your eyes, you can bury your head in the sand, but it doesn't change man's, and yes, women are involved too for this kind of stuff, nature. And our nature is to seize, conquer, take. Whether you like it or not, That is how it is done in the animal kingdom. And we are, yes, ladies and gentlemen, animals, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. The labor unions in this country came about because children as young as 4 and 5 years old were put into the mills to work to produce more money for the owners, and they were cheaper to keep and cheaper to pay because they were not adults. And many a child lost their lives or became limbless because they performed the duties that a full-size adult could not do it. And in fact, in several factories were burned when the women were locked into a sweatshop. When you watch those old Westerns going almost into the 19th century and the early 20th century, and then you look at all those women wearing from the Upper East Side of New York or Chicago, these expensive clothing, or the men with their beaver hats, just remember a lot of poor people worked for pennies a day.
Yes.
And then if they shopped at the local company store, they were charged exorbitant prices. I mean, the reason why a lot of the ballads from the US came out, I sold my soul to the company store. Think about it. They literally did. And they became serfs, even though they were in a free country. That's why the labor unions came about. And labor unions, like most governments, they become corrupt because the people in charge, their nature dictates to them what is allowed, whether or not it is ethically or morally, or in terms of integrity. So who comes in? The mafia. And it's just not the Italians, it's the Russians, it's the French, it's the Tongs from China. Everybody is to blame, and nobody wants to be held responsible or accountable. How interesting, those two words always show up where human nature and animal nature come into play. Something that no one is brought up to be responsible or accountable. Why? Because it takes guts to say, hi, yes, I'm the nasty, corrupt person who wants to buy the world, and I'm insatiable. My appetite will never be sufficient. I always want more and more. And you are become fat and obese with the things that you want, whether you like it or not. And that's why they put the trade unions in. And in the beginning, it was a good thought. But when you find Jimmy Hoffa, who's still missing in action, tied to a cement block, or maybe he's inside one of the buildings that was put up, it makes you wonder. I mean, the Chinese have a tradition of how with the yin and the yang, and also there's a certain way you have to do something to the building, otherwise it's cursed and it's not going to be successful. I mean, a lot of the TV programs involved with the Asian culture keeps on repeating that over and over again. And even if you're clueless, you get the idea that they're just as superstitious as Western Europe and Western America. So it's like this, folks. You have to pay a price for anything, whether it's in the beginning, in the middle, or that balloon payment at the end. And you have to decide how you're going to pay for it, how much of it you're going to pay for it, and whether or not you can continue to pay for it. What's its worth is relative value to you. And until you understand that and comes to grips with it, you're not going to solve the problem. Here, it's solvable, but it means that everybody has to cooperate and collaborate, right up there with accountability and responsibility.
I totally agree with that word accountability, which is one of the key words in Singapore. And it brings to mind about this event, or this long event that happened in the States, in America. You had in Hollywood the writers strike. If you do remember, about 3 months ago, when all production kind of halted for about 3 months, while the writers union and the writers guild, plus all the workers who are working behind the scenes in Hollywood, which brings the film onto the air, they were on strike, if you remember. And I was reading it, and very few, I should say that the outcome was good after 3 months, because the whole production, all the films stopped, if you do remember, including some of the film by Tom Cruise, because all the writers and the back end production workers stopped. And I think that gave me an idea, and that's striking, because you're talking about writers who are paid peanuts as compared to Tom Cruise, as compared to Scarlett Johansson, for example, as compared to the stars. So they were trying to negotiate to be paid more equitably, or more, a little bit more. So regardless of all the powers to be that are evil, that holds the power, either the union leaders, etc., I think there is a need, like what you say, dialogues, talks, and they're willing to come in as a bipartisan or tripartite, because in Singapore, we've got the government, we've got the unions and the workers coming together to actually negotiate. But I think the word would be collective strength in numbers, or collective bargaining. If we don't want to use the word union, it will be collective bargaining, because I would love to have the janitors have a union, for example. We should pay them more. For example,
Yes,
if the
I mean,
janitors in the whole world come together, they stop washing and cleaning up, I think we all have a problem. And I think the world will stop. So my point is, we should not forget and appreciate the value of the workers that we think is at the bottom, but maybe they should be at the top. That's what I think. Lillian, over to you. That's my conclusion
you're
for
right.
Article A.
And women are still being paid less than men, even in Hollywood. You would be surprised. And if you're not a well-known screenwriter,
tennis players,
you make less money. If you're not a well-known director, you use your own money to fund the movie or documentary.
Yes, I read that. Nobody wants to
the
fund
thing
you.
of the matter is that whether you like it or not, everything is done on your economic level in any country, and there is a caste system. The wealthy, the sometimes middle class that may or may not be there, and then the poor. And then within each one of those three classes, you have designations. And if you don't believe me, walk up to a Native American Indian or an indigenous Indian, and they will tell you that within their culture, the American Indian tribes, the warrior classes are on top, and the peaceful Indians are on the bottom, and they're made fun of and mocked. And that is a different culture from the white man's, but it's the same thinking. And ladies and gentlemen, you have got to understand that it's a question of where you show up on the food chain.
I love
And
that.
whether
Totally
you like it or
agree.
not, you have to embrace that, because everyone has a pecking order.
The pecking order.
And women usually end up below cats, dogs, cockroaches, rats, mice. We're always on the bottom. And so are children, who are also considered property in most countries, not just the United States, to be bought and sold on the open market, especially women.
Yeah, I mean, I read the
And
book
so stop
To Kill a
looking at
Mockingbird.
the world through your
Yes.
rose-colored glasses,
Yeah.
because unless you personally join with other people who personally share what you believe in, it is not going to change. Wishing upon a star, no matter where you are, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way.
So, Lillian, I like the way you expressed it. Depends on where you are, on which level you are in that food chain. Because
You have to recognize the reality of the situation. And
yeah,
you're not
yeah.
brought up that way, ladies and gentlemen. It took me all up until my 50s before I finally realized how real it wasn't, and that you're brought in an alternate dimension. I don't have to read science fiction to realize that there are two types of laws: thems who write it and thems who have to obey it. And the ones who write it are
I love
privileged,
that.
and the ones who have to obey it are the ones who get into trouble the most. Case in point, down south, they have different speed limits, and the cops and sheriffs hide behind signs. And if you go even an eighth faster than you should, it gave them the right to arrest you and throw you into jail. And the South, that's how they made their income. And to meet their income level, for bringing in, especially from the North, because the South still hate us for losing the war because of technology, the Industrial Revolution, nothing to do with, they just didn't like us at all. But that's beside the point. The point is that there are certain truths that one has to admit exist, and then you need to start addressing them. And we need to wind up the program because it's 11:15. So we will continue our discussion as usual. Viki, do you have any last messages?
We will have to talk about your segment about the power of words the next time, and then we will still continue to talk about environment, which is still the theme of state of current affairs. And I would like to talk about our collaboration, It's My Life. Again, this is a shout out. We are launching It's My Life 2024, 2025. It's My Life memoirs for your listeners, and for the listeners who are from Passionate World Talk Radio, write to Lillian if you are interested to know what is this all about. We have 20 slots for 20 books for 2024 and 2025. Lillian will be the writer for your story, your memoir, while I will be the publisher. And I think this is important because we're talking about life as in we have grown wiser, right? Even in these kinds of dialogues that we have, Lillian, I grow a little wiser each day. I look at things a little bit differently from a different angle and from a different perspective that I did not used to. I'm evolving and growing. I see that. And how is your life going to be? And I think that we all can determine our life, or we can look back at the life that we have walked and write down our journey before you go. That's going to be your story that you leave behind. That's going to be your footprint that you will leave behind for your children and your grandchildren, and the footprint on Earth. So Lillian, Cauldwell as the writer, myself as the publisher, if you're intrigued about what this project and collaboration is all about, write to Lillian. And we will tell you more on a personal level. It's a book for you, written for you, about you and your story so that you could leave your legacy behind. Lillian, over to you.
If you
Thank
wish
you
to
so
take
much.
advantage of this shout out, and you should, you can text us at 484-364-1032 or email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com. We want to thank you for joining us either in Singapore or in the United States. You can see this program all over again. Go over to our website, https://passionateworldtalkradio.com/blog or https://passionateworldtalkradio.com the slash state of current affairs. Click on the link that you find, plus point Google. It will take you right into the bowels of youtube.com, and you can find State of Current Affairs playing there. Get some popcorn, get yourself a soft drink, maybe even a hard drink. Enjoy. You can also hear the audio and the video on facebook.com/Passionate World Radio, linkedin.com/Lillian Cauldwell, and about 20 other social media platforms. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Stay tuned for Monday for the continuation. And for those who have something to say and express an opinion or want to come and join us, text us at 484-364-1032 or email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com. Thank you and have a terrific week.